Okay, so here's an example. Now when you switch from, we're going to teach you that these are what are called mythologies. But then to go to Zerotheism, you have to have a new morality system. Do you two know what a moral is? What a moral is? Jake, do you know what a moral is? Yeah, what's moral and immoral? No, this word right here. See this word, morals? Do you know what a moral is? Okay. Well, in the Bible, they teach you that from the Egyptians, they teach you if your soul is heavy, if you do a lot of things wrong, then your soul becomes heavy and you go into the lake of fire. So this word here, moral, we're going to teach you, this comes from, does anybody know what the Grim Reaper is? Okay, so in the old days, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, they used to believe that when you did something wrong, there was this winged goddess that had black wings that would fly into your world. She was called Mor, the god of death. And everything would become dark. So the Romans developed what's called moral science. They had a whole bunch of things that you would do wrong and you wouldn't do wrong. So now we're going to teach you a simple example of how you can derive morals, new moral system. So this guy, does everybody know who Isaac Newton is? Okay, Isaac Newton invented gravity. So when we take the rock, we drop it right here. Okay, so when we drop it down here, it's going to fall in 9.8 meters per second third. It's only going to take a second. And so that was, Newton invented this. And he invented this law, the laws of motion. Now, if you want, so when you take these laws of motion, you apply into society, you have to develop new morals. And some of them don't exist. So later on, when you become adults, you're going to have to make choices. And you might want to know what's wrong or right. So here's an example. This guy, Jean Sales, he's a French philosopher. In 1778, he's the one that said that humans are made from, you see these little symbols here? Each one of these is called an element. So this one here is called H, it's hydrogen. This one is called helium. And we've got oxygen and carbon. So carbon is what we are. And so Jean Sales said that through a great process, all these different atoms came together and formed us. The number 22 shown on the card to the children was a hasty mental typo. Correctly, humans are chin-ups plus 20 molecular forms, comprised of the 26 elements shown here in yellow and blue. The 26 element human molecular formula shown on the right. The so-called human molecular hypothesis was introduced in 1789 by French philosopher Jean Sales, who in his The Philosophy of Nature, a treatise on human moral nature, posited that we conclude that there exists a great principle of the human body which comes from a great process in which so many atoms of the earth, 92 naturally occurring elements specifically, become many millions of human molecules. A human molecule, the definition of one person, 3 different types of human molecules, A, B, and a child shown here, and AB being technically what's called a dihumanoid molecule, that is 2 human molecules, A and B, bonded chemically by way of a chemical bond quantified by so many joules per unit bond. And so he wrote this story called Newton and Sengel. And he said that on his story you see Newton, he's on the shore of Africa, Sengel's in Africa, and he's checking the tides. Remember the waves we looked at just a minute ago? He wanted to find out what foods were morally okay to eat. So over here we have a merman. You know what a merman is? What is it?
It's type of like a mermaid, but it's a man.
Okay, so there's a merman, and he's talking to this oyster. Does everybody know what an oyster is? What is it?
It's like this type of food that you sometimes eat.
Okay.
It has a shell.
Okay.
And it's a nut.
Yeah, there you're right. So then the oyster, and then an African is above the rock, and he's looking at the merman talk to the oyster, and the oyster is trying to plead for its life. And he says, the oyster is talking to him, and he says, "Please, Mr. Merman, don't eat me." And he's trying to reason with him why he shouldn't eat, the merman shouldn't eat the oyster. And African's looking over at both of them, and he's kind of laughing at the whole thing. Now Newton looks on, and he's trying to think to himself, whose soul should I save? Because he wants to know who has a better moral system. So we're here in morals. Who has better morals? So Newton decides that because these are just animals, that they don't have souls, and that he should save the African, because the African, from Egyptian, they believe that their god looks like a scarab or a scarab beetle. Anybody see the Mummy movie? Remember those little black beetles that would ran all over the place? That's what they used to believe their god looked like, those beetles. So Newton said that because the Africans believe in a cockafur, which is those little beetles, that he could save the soul of the African. But the merman and the oyster, he's not going to bother with them trying to teach them ethics. So ethics is the study of morals. So where this comes in is where you get confusing morals if you don't have if you're not thinking right. So the Christians say we're not allowed to eat shellfish. Now the Muslims says in the Quran you're not allowed to eat bacon, you're not allowed to drink wine. And then the Hindus in the Rig Veda, they say you're not allowed to eat any kind of meat. You have to be vegetarian. So this is where you have to be a smart thinker when you develop your morals, instead of just believing what it says in here. So the Quran in the old days, they said the Quran and also the Jewish religion, which is called the Torah, they said you can't eat bacon because the reason was that bacon, the pigs didn't used to be very healthy back in the day. A lot of people would get diseased and get affected. So somebody went in there and said that God told me that you shouldn't eat bacon, and so that's where that law came from. So that's where all morals come from. But so when you make choices, you don't have the new moral system wrote out for Zerotheism, but you have to be a smart person when you're making moral decisions. So here's a quick rule of thumb here. Remember that G's is the old timers would call it God's energy. Now we call it Gibbs energy. So
same letter, different concept.
Here's an example right here. If you go, this book came out in 2012, and these are the top 100 thinkers in the world right now. And they picked out 100 things that we should learn to become smarter people. This will make you smarter. So chapter called the Gibbs landscape right here. See the G? This is the same as Willard Gibbs right here. And the parts that are highlighted here, this is what's called the Gibbs landscape. And remember the girl surfing? Now she's riding the wave. In society there's waves like that, but you can't see them. So he says that we can imagine any given city, country, or continent overlain with a map of energy available to do work. This includes but extends beyond the chemical energy framework used in the context of biological systems, and we can apply that to economics, or to society, or to morals. To clarify, it's not that we can't see Gibbs landscapes, it's that we can't see three-dimensional Gibbs landscapes because no one's ever made one. We can find, however, two-dimensional Gibbs landscapes, such as shown here, made by American chemist turned Yale physician David Huang in his 2001 The Thermodynamics of Love, where he shows that two couples, A and B, at the start of the reaction can have their free energy change of their reaction mapped over time, and if it's a favored reaction, will cross the activation energy barrier and show a decrease in Gibbs energy over time, indicated by a level below the equilibrium line, quantitatively shown by the less than or equal to symbol of Gibbs free energy in respect to 0, symbolic of the happy couple, which can be contrasted to the reaction where A and B meet, go through the activation energy barrier, and have an end state Gibbs energy above the equilibrium line, indicative by the greater than or equal to symbol of Gibbs energy in respect to 0, symbolically the unhappy couple. So the quick rule of thumb here is when you're making a moral choice, the best things that happen are spontaneous. So, has Sarah ever told you about the parties I have in my place in the backyard? No?
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
So you guys ever been to a party? What was your favorite party?
My favorite party was when it was Sarah's birthday.
Sarah's birthday? Why? Why was it so
Because
fun?
it had like some party stuff that kids could do, and she had bouncy house.
You had what?
A bouncy house, and in the backyard the adults were talking.
Oh, nice. So that's an example. Everybody's having fun and it happens spontaneously. Now that will be measured by this symbol that's going to the left. And now other kinds of things, that's what spontaneous things are. They happen, those are called natural reactions. Okay, now sometimes you might not want to do something. Like for the last 4 years I throw a big party, and our parties are so big that we have 2 police cars come and watch us for the whole night long because we get so loud and wild.
Yeah!
Like we had a dunk tank one year, we had dancing, we have a big fire, we had a big stage set up here where everybody knows Kid? She won a dancing contest last year for $100. So she was dancing up here, but that was my 4th party. But last year I was getting what's called ambivalence, which means I kind of wanted to have it, but I kind of didn't want to have it because it was getting kind of stale. That means that's what's called ambivalence, where you're not sure if you want to have it. People kept calling me, they were telling me, oh, you got to have this party. So finally I just gave in, and I was like, all right, I'm having a party. But this year, I'm very reluctant. I don't want to have the party. So I'm just going to avoid it. So this is an area where down here, this is kind of where when you get to moral choice you don't want to make, you want to use these 3 rules here. And that's kind of gives you the old timers would say it's God's energy, but now we say that it's the energy of chemistry. Okay, so here's an example. What we're going to teach you. How many people want to be here? Raise your hand. Partying. No? Why? You don't like to dance?
No, people are like saying on the letters. I'm afraid I'm going to probably get on a letter and fall. I want to get on the letter.
Okay, well, how many people want to be over here? Raise your hand. How many people want to be cold? Okay. All right. Well, there's 2 kinds. When you switch from going from what the old timers would tell you to you switch over to physics and chemistry. That's what Zerotheism is, switching over and just saying just God said this and God said that. And now we can measure things. So physics tends to explains why things are cold. So and sometimes you can have reactions. Remember how we did the reactions last year with the temperature? Remember we measured the things and we put the chemicals together. In one reaction, the temperature got cold, and in another reaction, the temperature got hot. So some reactions can get hot and cold. Now, Carl Jung, he's a psychologist. He says the meeting of 2 people is like the contact of 2 chemical substances.
Listen, Morty, I hate to break it to you, but what people call love is just a chemical reaction that compels animals to breed. It hits hard, Morty, then it slowly fades, leaving you stranded in a failing marriage. I did it. Your parents are gonna do it. Break the cycle, Morty. Rise above. Focus on science.
This right here, this is Goethe. Remember the guy with the little skull in the picture that discovered the bone? Remember we saw the picture with the guy that was studying the skull? That was Goethe. Now he also said that from evolution we can also say that people react together like chemicals. So he says, as Carl Jung, he says the medium when 2 people meet, it's like a chemical reaction. Just like when these 3 people meet, A, Charlotte, B is Edward, and C is the captain. When they meet, there's going to be chemical reactions. And the reactions are going to be determined by the energy between the 3 things. In the old days, they would say it's God's energy. Now we say it's Kid's energy.
In Russia, when someone wants someone, he says, you, come here.
Oh, you mad romantic Russians.
If you had studied Kamachev, you would know what I am talking about.
Who's Kamachev?
He was one of our greatest scientists. He has proved beyond any question that physical attraction is purely electrochemical.
You don't say.
Kamachev has proven it.
Okay, so here's an example. What's a fermion? Anybody know? Remember, fermions are things you can touch, like giraffe fur. Those are things that have matter. So a fermion is like these dry leaves over here that are a heightened state of ready to be combustion. Now, bosons are named after
Light.
Bose, which is the Indian physicist, Chandra Bose. And this is named after Enrico Fermi. So, you see the light here? You take enough light and you heat it up, this thing all sparks and comes into combustion. So sometimes when you two get older, you're going to end up falling in love with someone.
It's the perfect night to go out and do it right. One look into your eyes sets me in motion. Don't need psychology with this biology. All this theology is heaven flowing. All we wanna do is feel love. Get it to the rhythm of the two of us. Wanna feel your love, can't get it up together.
And of the people that fall in love, according to surveys, 2 out of 3 people believe in love at first sight. That means that one of these 2 people are going to see the person and they're going to say that that's the person for me, and I'm going to fall in love with them and I'm going to stay with them forever.
I feel the chemistry between you and me. This electricity when you're touching me. I feel the chemistry pulled by your gravity. I want you touching me. I feel you touching me.
The light here is what triggers the reaction, just like the light here is what triggers the combustion between the flames. So this here, the matter, the leaf is like the person, which is the fermion, and the light, which is triggering the heat, is the light of these two seeing each other and falling in love. And of the 2/3 of people that believe in love at first sight, 20% of people, that means 1 out of 5 people are going to fall in love at first sight and marry that person. So it's going to be like a sparked reaction that goes. And this is the way we think of people, as we define people as human molecules. Now down here, this is what's called sociophysics. It's when you apply physics to people interacting together in society. So the important point about here, he says that see where he says humans are fermions? Now, let's say that you guys have a... Let's say after this break we're going to go play in the backyard, right? We'll play with the balls pretty soon. Now, let's say if we pick one of you as the captain. Who wants to be captain? Well, you can't be captain. Okay, so Temple, say we picked out you as captain, right? Now you're going to give everybody else the commands on how to score. Now, when you give the commands, that's called the way that we're going to hear you giving the commands. The force, we're going to listen to you, and the way that we respond to those commands and do what we tell you to do is called field particles, which are these. It's a mediating agency that interconnects humans or fermions into systems. So when you give the command, the sound is going to go through the air, through the bosons, and that's going to give everybody. It's going to trigger us to react the way you want us to react. So these things, the red part here, the bosons, are the mediating agency between us when we go out and play.
So you're saying the bosons are giving the orders?
No, the bosons are the force that connects. When we go out and when you give an order, you're gonna force us to do what we want you to do, because we all agree that we're gonna play together. So that's the force. What transmits the force is called the bosons, and they're little particles. For light, they're little particles called photons. So in the old days, in the 1970s, they didn't understand if humans were fermions or bosons. This is a guy who was a physics professor at the University of Washington, or this is a sociologist, and this is a physics professor. And they didn't know if humans were fermions or bosons. Now we know that humans are fermions, and when you give the orders, that's the bosons. That's light, that's sound. But there's no God involved in this process, just all matter and energy. And then when matter and energy interact in the system, you get what's called Gibbs energy, which is God's energy. So when somebody says God's going to curse you if you do something, you can understand it. You can understand it in terms of Gibbs energy. So remember we all passed this around here? What we're teaching you today? You can think of a human. There's 26 types of elements that we're made of: hydrogen, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, and a bunch of other ones. And so you can define yourself here as, see these little symbols, CHNOPS plus 22. That means you're made of these 6 atoms, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, plus 22 other elements. Now, and then the way we formed here is by chemical reactions. And so you see a little baby right there?
I see it.
So the baby here was formed by Gibbs energies. So these are the energies that formed you. And this is the chemical reaction. When your parents met, they reacted and formed you as a child, and they became a couple. So this is where they are as bonded together. And the bonding force right there is the bosons, the mediating agents. We just talked the red part. And here's before when they were single. So here's a guy who's giving the same talk that the class we're teaching you right now. This guy was Wilhelm Oswald. He was German. He was a famous German. They called him a radical atheist because he said, "Oh, we can't be talking about these." See what he wrote here? He wrote this in his biographical notes when he was in his 70s. And he said, "I came from the same." You pronounce this chinops and say schnapps or chinops. I came from the same schnapps combination from which Robert Bunsen, Herbert Helmholtz, or Gustav Kirchhoff came from. So what we're doing here, instead of just saying that we're a chinops combination, we say that we're a chinops plus 22 combination. So if you go to Harvard, this is what they'll teach you if you could take a biology class. Chinops plus 22.
Maybe you could tie that into the question that Temple asked about humans made from dirt.
Yeah, well, we got a video on that. Remember when you asked how did God create humans from dirt? Okay, that comes from what's called clay creation myth. And we'll talk about that shortly.
Like making like a bowl out of like clay.
In the old days, they used to think that God took clay and they split the clay in half, and they took one half and put it on a potter's wheel, and one half put the other half in. One god called Kino modeled one shape of the clay into a man, and then another god, the same god Kino on his potter's wheel, made another one into a woman. And then Isis, you guys remember the cross symbol? Isis had a cross that had a little circle in it. And that was representative of the sun setting on the northern cross of the star constellation. And so she took her cross and she put it up to the clay figure's mouth. And like say, put it up to Jake's mouth, and I said, I'm bringing you to a life. But they used to believe that would impart spirit into the clay. So now we understand that that's not correct anymore, because clay... To clarify this point, although we'll cover this more in detail in slide 37 later in the lecture, the Christian story of the creation of Adam and Eve by the power of God in the Garden of Eden is a rewrite in part of the Egyptian mythological story of the god Khnum creating clay human figurines on his potter's wheel who were brought to life by way of the power of the goddess Hathor, who took her ankh and imparted spirit or breath into their mouth, thereby giving them animation or eternal life, which is found in the rewrite of the name Adam, which is Hebrew for clay, and Eve, which is Hebrew for breath or life. Clay is made of aluminum. So aluminum is not part of the human molecular formula. So that's where we know that they made something up that wasn't true. So aluminum is... We're teaching you today, the class we're teaching is Zerotheism. This guy, anyone know what a Nobel Prize is? That means when you do something really smart in science or economics, they give you a Nobel Prize and it's worth $28 million. Everybody thinks that you've done something good for society. So this guy won a Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1909, the year after he started giving these things called Sunday monastic sermons. And he taught how you can get, this means morality right here, from force and matter, force and energy for teaching.
So aluminum has atomic number of 13, it's right here in the period.
Okay, so you see... So you see aluminum right here, Temple? So in the old days they said God created us out of clay. That's what Adam means in Hebrew. And so when we measure ourselves, we find that we're not made of aluminum. So that means the clay creation myth isn't true. We'll show that in a few minutes. Okay, so here you go. You see how this guy says I'm a chin-ups plus combination. So now we're starting to understand that this is what a human is. And so here's the modern view right here. So some people You see this right here. In 2000, they used to think we were a 22-element reactive molecule.